We interrupt this program to bring you the following special report from ABC News. ABC News presents Astronaut Salute, ceremonies at the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston. Brought to you by Tang, the energy breakfast drink with more vitamin C than orange juice for spacemen and Earth families.
Surprise.
Oh, breakfast in bed. 49 days in a row. Honey, I'm only having a baby.
Easy, now drink your Tang. You need all the energy you can get. Remember, it's got lots of vitamin C. You know, Tang went to the moon with the astronauts? Gee, I wonder what he'll be when he grows up.
With all this Tang, I know what she'll be.
An astronaut.
She.
An astronaut?
For spacemen and Earth families, Energy Tang.
Good day from ABC Space Headquarters in New York. This is Frank Reynolds, along with our science editor, Jules Bergman, and we're about to bring you a report on the ceremony at the Manned Spaceflight Center in Houston. President Nixon has arrived in Houston at Ellington Air Force Base about 16 minutes ago, and here we are now at Houston. He's going there to present the Medal of Freedom to the men and women of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. The president's car, we understand, is on the way from Ellington Air Force Base, which is not very far away, and should be arriving there very shortly. The wives of the astronauts and their families are all there, waiting for this ceremony. After this is over, of course, Mr. Nixon will fly on to Honolulu, taking with him the wives of astronauts Lovell and Haise, and the parents of astronaut Swigert.
Frank, our cameras are now looking down the main road into the gate at the Manned Spacecraft Center, about 8 miles from Ellington Air Force Base. The presidential car is supposed to be arriving through that gate any moment now. It's a gray, cloudy day in Houston, threatening to rain. If it does, the ceremony may have to be moved inside the large auditorium at the Manned Spacecraft Center. The ceremony, as we'll see, is just outside on a podium erected to the side of the auditorium.
Well, let's hope the weather holds up for a while, at least until they can get the ceremony over with.
Well, if the Apollo 13 jinx holds true, it's bound to rain in the next hour. And ironically, as you will shortly see in one of those shots, the ceremony is right next to a huge model of the LEM, the lunar module that's outside the auditorium. We've done many film spots from it and live spots. Well, last night the workmen were moving it a few feet to set up the podium for the ceremony this morning. 2 of the legs collapsed and the LEM went kaput right over on its side. So they hastily erected a wooden scaffolding to pull it back up to its true stature.
Well, there was nothing at all wrong with the other one that worked so well in space and brought the astronauts back all the way to the point where they finally entered the command module yesterday and then splashed on down. The astronauts themselves are still aboard the carrier Iwo Jima right now, but they'll be leaving, in less than an hour. They'll head for Samoa, Pago, where they are assured a very colorful and warm welcome. But they won't stay very long on the island. They'll leave about 3 o'clock this afternoon Eastern Time for the flight to Honolulu. And there tonight they will be met by the president and their wives. And then they, too, will be awarded the Medal of Freedom. So Mr. Nixon is traveling all over the country today in order to demonstrate his pride in the accomplishment, not only of the astronauts, but of the men and women who brought them down, too, and made yesterday's happy ending possible.
If the weather and air travel conditions hold out correctly, Frank, the astronauts will arrive in Hawaii at 4:30 p.m. Hawaii time, just a half an hour after the president arrives. They'll land at Hickam Field, the Air Force Base. The presidential plane, Air Force One, will have landed at International Field. The astronauts will drive over to International Field, and there the president will personally present them with the nation's Medal of Freedom. What's unclear after that is whether or not the astronauts and their wives will stay in Hawaii overnight, as the president is going to. Originally, the astronauts were supposed to just refuel at Hawaii and go straight on back to Houston for debriefing. But now it appears that they may stay in Hawaii overnight.
We understand the president's car is just at the gate, and we're looking at it. ABC's David Snell, who has been in Houston throughout this long week, is there today, and so is our White House correspondent, Tom Gerald, who flew in with the president.
Well, the tension that lifted from Mission Control yesterday, Frank, at the splashdown has descended here on the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston. All the protocol and public affairs officers started scrambling yesterday afternoon to make ready for the president, who is arriving at this time. Here with me is Tom Jarrell, who has preceded the president by just a little. Tom, what is the feeling in the presidential party? How does the president feel today?
Of course, he's very elated, David. Traveling with him is Mrs. Nixon. She's going with him to Hawaii. His limousine has just pulled up.
Dr. Payne, Mrs. Lovell, Mrs. Haise, Mr. and Mrs. Swigert, all of the members of the NASA team who are here, and members of your family who are here in such great numbers today, I have a very special honor, first as President of the United States, to speak for all of the American people in expressing appreciation to the men and women on the ground who made it possible for the men to return to Earth. We express our appreciation to you. But I also am authorized to do something that in this office I cannot usually do. And that is to speak not just for Americans, but to speak for people all over the world. There's poured into the White House in these past 24 hours an unprecedented number of wires and letters and cables. There have poured in the kind of messages that have told me over and over again that it is vitally important to convey to the wives, to the astronauts, and to the men and women on the ground at NASA the fact that not just Americans, but people all over the world, not just people in the free world, but people in the communist world, people of all religions, of all faiths, of all political beliefs, that they also were on that trip with these men. I could read many, many wires today that express those sentiments. I have one that I think perhaps summarizes them as well as any. I read it to you. To the President of the United States, for the safe return of 3 astronauts, we express profound gratitude to God, to men of science, and to all those who contributed to make this possible. To Your Excellency and to the people of the United States, we give assurance of deep admiration for the great skill employed and courage shown in the carrying out of this extraordinary undertaking, which has held the attention and the hope of the world. To the heroes of the day and to their families go our joyful best wishes. That message expresses a sentiment that runs through all of them. It happens to be from Pope Paul. And I would also mention something else. That in these last few days, never have so many people on this earth, in all nations, fought together so much, shared an experience together so much, and never have they prayed so much for the success of this mission. I had a man last night at the White House at a dinner who came up to me. I know he hasn't been in church for years. And he said, I never prayed so hard in my life as I prayed these last 3 or 4 days. And I know that whatever our religious faith may be, whatever our differences in this respect are, that we know that through our prayers, we help to participate in this successful recovery. But let me say one other thing. I think it's important that out of this mission, we recognize that it was not a failure. I remember when I called Captain Lovell, he said he was sorry that they were unable to complete their mission of landing on the moon. I would reply in this way. The 3 astronauts did not reach the moon, but they reached the hearts of millions of people in America and in the world.